This is the Recover with God podcast, where we talk about recovery from eating disorders, disordered eating, diet culture, body image, weight struggles, overexercising, and anything related to food and body that keeps you feeling trapped. The enemy wants to distract us with these struggles, and that is why recovery with God is so important. This podcast will point you to God and the hope and freedom we have through Jesus, whether you're here for your own recovery or you want to help someone you know. So let's dive in and hear what God has to say through this episode of the Recover with God podcast. Hey there, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Recover with God podcast. I'm Jayme, host of the podcast. And if you've been following along this season, you know that every single episode so far has been just me. Well, not today. Today, I have a guest. Her name is Taylor, and I cannot wait for you to hear her story. It is powerful. It shows how instrumental God is in the recovery process, and I just love how open and vulnerable Taylor is to share her story with you. So, without further ado, let me just introduce you to her so we can start this conversation. Hey, Taylor, thank you so much for saying yes to being on the podcast. It's really great to see you face to face. I know we've been chatting for so long, so I'm just loving that we're doing this.
Yes, thank you so much. And I know I've had a chance to tell you this before our call here, but yeah, I've just been such a fan of you in the podcast. So it's really a full circle moment for us to be doing this. Very excited.
Absolutely. You are the first person that I have had on the podcast who has been a listener in the past and
Wow.
has a story to share. So this is also kind of full circle for me too. I think we're
So
both in
cool.
agreement on that. Yes. So again, so thank you for being willing to share your story and just praying that it will bless whoever's listening right now. You might need to hear it.
Yes.
Um, but before we dive into your story, I have to ask you the zeal question. As longtime listeners know, it's one of my favorite words. No, it is my favorite word. And I love to just hear what other people think about the word zeal. So, what does living with zeal look like in your life right now?
I love that word so much. And I think right now in this season, I'm a newlywed. So going on 2.5 months of being married. And so I think zeal right now is just all things newlywed, learning what it means to be a wife. Um, and just, yeah, just everything that comes with that. It's definitely been a full-time job in a good way. But yeah, it's just, I feel like right now I'm just living in so much newness and adventure.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I think that's a really good example of what zeal is because it changes with the seasons of life that we're in.
Right.
Like you
Yeah,
could ask yourself that question every year of your life and have a different answer, and that's absolutely normal and okay. So if,
totally.
if I asked you next year, it might be something else, but for now, that's what you're living. And so it makes perfect sense. And yeah, that being a newlywed, that is really a special time. So I'm so happy for
Yes.
you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Course. And now I'd like to open it up to you to share your story, what God's placed on your heart to share with the listeners.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I guess just a quick background on myself. I want to start with saying that my number one thing is just my love for Jesus. My faith is so foundational. I gave my life to the Lord at 8 years old, and my life has been very far from perfect, but I've just been able to run back to him constantly. And so I want to just, continue to give him the glory. I'm 32. I live in Huntington Beach, California, where I've been born and raised. Like I said, recently married, and we also have two dogs. One is a puppy, so she definitely keeps us very busy.
Yeah.
I'm an entrepreneur. I've been working as a specialty recruiter in construction for almost 9 years now.
Um,
And my friends definitely describe me as a type A perfectionist, which has helped me in some ways in life, but has also kind of harmed me in certain ways. And that sort of leads me into just my history with eating disorders. And I say plural because unfortunately I've had pretty much every eating disorder that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Really, I just as I'm, reflecting going into this podcast, I was thinking of back, like, when did this really start for me? And as a child, I had a very good, healthy, neutral relationship with food. I ate when I was hungry, I stopped when I was full, never had any food rules or any body awareness. But I think around 13, when puberty was really hitting, is when I first started to have more body awareness. I distinctly remember someone made a comment that I think was intended as a compliment, but it definitely did more harm than good. Someone had said, "Oh, I noticed you're no longer stick thin," and that is really, I think, what when it started. I entered into freshman year of high school, and I had desire for identity, validation. I wanted to feel attractive. So that's when I started to really begin with these really unrealistic beauty standards, right? It was the girls on the magazines, all the photoshopped runway models. That was what I thought I needed to look like in order to have any sort of value or worth. And so behind the scenes at home, that's when life was really unstable as well. There was a lot of mental health challenges at home. I think for me, controlling my body image was just a way to feel in control of something since everything was so unstable. And sophomore year in high school, I started to do cheerleading, which increased a lot of pressure on my appearance. I remember that was when I really started to restrict food, skip meals. I became really obsessive with exercise. And then fast forward to senior year is when I remember losing a lot of weight because again, I was missing meals. I was really restricting and very obsessive with counting calories. And unfortunately, I also received a lot of positive attention from my peers for that weight loss. And so it
Mm-hmm.
felt good. It was definitely very feeling based. I mean, throughout this time, I definitely was not really walking with the Lord at all. I think I kind of blamed him for some of the family issues going on at home. So I want to make that clear. It was really not free in that area at the time. And in college is when I remember the cycle had really escalated. So that's when restriction became very unsustainable. I think in high school, I kind of was able to maintain it and still function. But that is when I remember a lot of the binge purge cycles really started to kick off. So the weekdays looked like very heavy restriction, daily workouts. The weekends, I got into more partying. I'd have hangovers. And then to cope with all that, food was what I used to cope. It was binging on a lot of food, which I labeled as off limits. So for me, it was very almost like animalistic, excessive, eating as much as I could of these quote unquote bad foods. And then it felt like kind of like this animalistic, like almost out of body experience where I had no control and to the point of where I just couldn't even move. It was so uncomfortable. Um, where I did purge after that. And for me, that looked like forcing myself to vomit. And then I also would take extreme amounts of laxatives as well. And then the next day, of course, I mean, throughout all of that, I felt so much shame and guilt. And the next day was like, okay, back to no longer eating. So it was this cycle. And in college, I also became a professional cheerleader for a NHL team.
Wow.
And yeah, I did that for 2 years.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, that was with that a lot of scrutiny came. We were wearing
Yeah.
these teeny outfits. There's bikini photo shoots, and I was constantly in front of cameras. So even more pressure to look a certain way had occurred. Um, at the same time, I had lost a loved one due to cancer. I was going through a really bad toxic breakup. And so I felt just very numb and depressed and disconnected. And during that time, it was like almost like the eating disorders just continued. It was almost like a way of life. I was just used to it. I was sort of
Mm.
just okay with it. I was accepting it.
Yeah.
And I remember another distinct moment, my second year of auditioning for the team, the coach called me out and basically said that I needed to maintain my weight better. The first year they really liked me, but I needed to work on
Wow.
just toning up more. And they did this in front of other women and judges. And I was just so embarrassed. And I remember thinking, okay, I need to really step it up, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, the eating disorders even intensified, just trying to eat as less as I could during the week, try to exercise hours and hours a day. And then the weekends I couldn't handle it. It was
Mm.
the binge purge cycle. Um, and then to add another layer, throughout that time, I was introduced to prescription ADHD medication by a friend who told me, "Hey, this really helps me to focus. It gets me more motivated." I was really struggling with my grades because of the just depression and grief I was
Mm.
experiencing, and so I was like, "Oh, this pill sounds amazing." She mentioned also really suppresses your appetite, um, and so I got on the prescription pills, and it was, at first it felt like an amazing miracle, but it only lasted probably maybe a month or so before the abuse really began to take over. Um, the appetite suppression stopped working, the dependency increased. So I had to keep actually upping the dose. And I even had an overdose at one point. Um, it was that bad. I was taking so much more than I was supposed to. And I still continued. It was like that happened. It was like the next day, just, oh, back on the pills. Just, I felt like I was basically a robot during this time. Um, and so, yeah, that was kind of like my mid 20s. I, graduated college. I was working full time. I was still very spiritually disconnected. I was really just chasing that control and validation. There's periods I think that looked quote unquote better from the outside, maybe with a little bit less of the binge purge cycle. I was working full time, salary based position. I think that kind of became more of an idol than some of the appearance stuff had been, but there's still those struggles. And yeah, I would describe just my late 20s as functioning but not free. It was like certain things had gotten better, but there was still these relapses. I might go for a month at a time where I didn't have a binge purge, but it would still happen on the back end. I think a lot of that was still kind of obsessing over the pill addiction because that was still occurring at the time. And it was a dark time. It's hard as I've been just again looking back and reflecting. It's like everything kind of seems just kind of gray and fuzzy. I don't remember the exact timelines of all these things. I just know that I just felt so disconnected from my body. And um, looking at pictures even is hard just because I remember how disconnected I felt. And I feel so sorry for that girl that was just so broken and was, yeah, abusing pills, was in a toxic eating disorder, just whether it was orthorexia or just the bulimia, kind of eating like almost, I don't like to necessarily label each of the disorders, but I was eating almost like, what an anorexic might eat every day, just, yeah, feeling awful. But I did have a breakthrough in my late 20s, which was the one of the biggest breakthroughs in my life, becoming completely free of the prescription pills. And so that alone was a huge testimony for me and God. I felt like I was entering back into desiring that again. I felt so lost. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to pursue Jesus. I know he's real. I know he's out there and wants to
Yeah.
to heal me. And it wasn't necessarily that I stopped taking the pills first before God. I just wanted to pursue him and be with him. And as I was going to church again, I was in godly community. The desire and for the taking the ADHD medication just slowly kind of dissipated. I no longer had the cravings for it. I decided just to basically give that up full cold turkey. And again, that was all Jesus. I don't take any credit for it, but it taught me such an important truth that even if I'm healed for one mechanism, there could be something else still happening, right? And so I was super happy about that victory, but I was still struggling a lot with my body image and just how I felt as a woman, my eating disorders. So that was a huge yeah, like I said, victory, but it was also a turning point where I knew that there's more work that needed to be done. And I was just aware that God could do it and would do it in his timing. So fast forward to today, I consider myself completely free from all eating disorders. I
Amazing.
have not had any, yes, thank you, Jesus. I have not had any binge urges for months. And honestly, there's a couple of things I feel like really changed it for me. I think number one was, of course, surrendering control, just even obsessing over trying to heal, which I was for so
Mhm.
long because I felt so much shame and I felt like I just had to overcome this in my own on my own strength. And once I kind of stopped worrying about that, that was very key. It was like, you know what? I'm just gonna have grace for myself and know that God's gonna do this for me. And then number two, from more of a practical level, I stopped dieting because that was one
Mm,
thing I had always done. I was like I was always on some sort of like diet,
yeah.
and not necessarily like, oh, I'm doing keto or anything necessarily like that, but it's more just having these food rules, right? Where
Mm,
during the week I could only eat, chicken and cauliflower, and I had a intermittent fast. Like I was always on some sort of diet. Um, and I just finally said, you know what, I'm done. If I want a cookie, I'm gonna have one. And if I want
yeah.
pizza tonight, I'm gonna have pizza. And once I just completely removed that, it was like I no longer had the need to binge and purge. So that was kind of I would say the last one that I was struggling with as well was like, I was still kind of obsessive with exercise, but the binge and purge one was to me such an obvious like I'll call it a sin because that's what it was for me when I just felt like I did this and I knew God didn't like it. But once, yeah, I stopped with all the food rules and I ate when I was hungry. I stopped trying to like tell myself to not eat.
Yeah.
It just really it solved itself in a way. So
Mhm.
it seems very obvious to someone who maybe hasn't had any issues, like duh. But when you're so used to like trying to tell yourself not to eat or certain things are bad, then you almost become obsessed with it and want it so bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where we're at today.
I can completely relate to honestly a lot of your story. I feel like we have a lot of similar um, parts of our journey, right? Other than I was never an
Mhm.
NFL cheerleader, but I no, I completely understand. And even just the restrictive behaviors can feed so much into feeling the need to binge because it's kind of your body's natural reaction to not being fed. And
Mhm,
and
mhm.
so yeah, eliminating that was huge for me too. And I love that you pointed out, even with the drug addiction, I love that you pointed out that you decided to re like kind of go back to your relationship with God before you even chose to recover from that. Because I think that's
Yeah.
such a key point that God
Yes.
doesn't
Yeah.
he doesn't want us to wait and come to him when we are already fixed. Like I think
Right. Yeah.
there's so much pressure to think, well, I have to fix myself first and then God will
Mhm.
accept me and then we
Right.
can have this relationship again. God's like,
Yeah.
no, come to me now. You need me. And
Yes.
and then showing that because you did that, because you took that step of faith, because
Right.
you trusted him while you were still probably feeling like a mess, that
Absolutely. Yeah.
he then was working on your heart. He then started convicting you to let go of these things that were just not serving you
Right.
and that were still kind of in the way of having that full relationship with him. So,
Yeah. Amen. That's exactly it.
mhm,
That's a key. And that
yeah.
changed everything for me.
Yeah, no, so thank you for sharing that. Is there anything else about your relationship with God that you want to mention in terms of your recovery journey?
Yeah, I think just to even add on to that, like you said, like my relationship with God was everything. And it was
Mm,
different than what I had even thought when I was in my darkest, not even talking to God. He was still in control and he was still looking after me. And he knew that I was going to be victorious in these areas. And
mhm,
what was interesting too is even with prescription pills, like, he did heal me instantly with that. It was like cold turkey, just it stopped. But when it came to bulimia, I was a lot closer to God during that time. And I kept praying, Lord, heal me. Do what you did with the pills. Just take it away.
yeah.
Take away my desires. Heal me today. But he just healed me differently. He wanted to um, do it in a way that was more practical. I felt like he wanted to
Mm,
really co-labor with me in that and not just heal the bulimia, but heal the mindset behind it, which again, for me, I had to stop idolizing my body. I had to stop
mm,
idolizing my appearance. I had to stop trying to go against the way he created me by saying no to hunger cues. Um, he wanted me to nourish myself because that's how he created us. He gave me hunger cues for a reason. And um, so I believe it showed me a whole nother level of God, how he wants to partner with us in our victories.
Yeah.
And now I just feel again so much more free. I don't think about food 24/7. Before, that's all I thought about because I was so hungry. And that's why
Yeah.
it led to these binge purge cycles. And um, yeah, I mean, I just know that he's so involved in all the details. He sees all of it, and he wants us to live from a place of fulfillment because that's who he is. He fulfilled everything on the cross, and we get to live in abundance from that place.
Amen.
And yeah, so all glory to
Mhm.
God. It's everything. Don't give up your relationship with Jesus throughout this. It's so important.
So true. And I think I love the words you use, co-laboring, when you talked about your recovery. And I appreciate you sharing the difference between your recovery from prescription pills and recovery from bulimia, because I think and even myself included, I remember also praying that prayer, like, you want God to
Mm,
take this from you. So if someone's listening right now
yeah,
and they're like, and they've been praying for months, years, however long, God, take
right.
this from me, heal me, that it's possible. And I'm sure
Yes.
there are stories where it's happened for some people that
Yeah.
way, and that glorifies God too, but that's not always the way that He heals. And so if you're out there right now and you're like, I've been praying and it's not happening, that just might
Mm-hmm.
not be the story that God has for you. So
Yeah,
I think, Taylor, your
exactly.
example is so helpful to see that sometimes there's so much God can teach us in recovery that we have to
Right.
go through the hard steps and that process to get
Right.
to where He wants us to be in our relationship with
Yes.
Him. And for me too, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like going through the really hard parts of recovery helped me to know that it was going to last, that it wasn't just a temporary
Mm,
recovery, that it wasn't just,
yeah.
well, am I going to relapse? And
Wow.
if
Yeah.
that happens, like obviously there's grace in that too, but for me,
Right.
I was like, okay, like I went through something really hard but I've learned so much along the way that I can
Amen.
now
Yeah.
apply. Like, when you
Yes.
have, because the devil's still going to attack. And when you have those hard
Mm-hmm.
moments,
Mm-hmm.
you have the tools, you have well, the spiritual armor. Like
Amen.
you've
Yeah.
really learned how to put that on. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's such a great point that I didn't even necessarily think of. And yeah, it's so applicable now. There's going to be something comes up. We're living in an imperfect world. We're imperfect beings, but
Mhm.
we can just learn to trust God and trust that He does it differently sometimes. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's such a beautiful picture.
hmm And now you have this testimony too of everything that you've gone through that you're sharing today with people who are listening, and they're in a
Yeah,
place where you once were, and they're,
yeah,
they're still struggling. So it's just,
right,
I think the more we talk about this, which is why we're here today, the more we talk about
yeah,
this, especially as Christians, that it takes away that shame, it takes away that guilt, it takes away
yeah,
that feeling of being alone and isolated, because that's exactly what the enemy wants us to feel, is that
right,
we're the only one, no one understands, and it's
yeah,
so not true.
mhm,
So
yeah,
yeah,
amen.
thank you for that. And on that note, I'd be curious to see what you have to say to someone right now who's listening and they're just really feeling stuck or hopeless and
Yeah,
they're in this process.
totally. And yeah, I've been there. I completely understand how you're feeling. My advice would be again, don't focus so much on trying to recover.
Mm.
That's where the enemy wants you. He wants you to focus on the shortcomings, focus more on just filling your life with Jesus. And what that looks like is it's not always necessarily having to read the Bible, do all these things, but it's living your life. That's how God created us, is to just enjoy the hobbies that you enjoy doing, enjoy being with the people that you love, enjoy yes, worship and prayer, and ask, and areas too where you don't feel like necessarily a desire to get in the word. I've been there and I've asked God, like, I want your word more. I want to worship you more. And he does it. It's like he literally, like I said, is so in the details that he blesses that. And so I think if you just focus on that, honestly, the need for again, we don't know your story, whoever's listening, but if it's a need for control, or like a food obsession or a body image obsession, whatever it is, that will become quieter and dimmer as you're filling yourself with things of Jesus. um but I get it. We've both have been there, Jayme and I, so we
Yeah.
understand. And it can feel defeating, but the victory is already yours. Even if you don't experience it today, you are healed, and just speak that over yourself.
Yeah.
Believe it, pray. It makes the biggest difference.
So true. And that it is a process, it is a journey. It's not going to be overnight. But
Right.
the more time we do spend with God, and that applies honestly even after recovery, that applies to so many
Yeah.
areas of life that, even if you just experience anxiety for any reason whatsoever, that could not even be related to food or your body,
Right.
that the more time we spend with God, the less those things will be in our
Yeah.
minds, the quieter
Yep.
I love that, the quieter things will become, and so it's just
Yeah.
like life in general, the more we focus on God, the more we spend time with Him, just the
Mhm.
more it's gonna seep into literally every area of our
Mhm.
lives. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
great advice. And I just think, as we go through recovery and as we even after recovery, like still dealing with the enemy's lies, the enemy's attacks on us, which are going to happen.
Mhm.
What would you say? What does it look like practically for you to navigate now that you would say like you haven't had any binge urges or anything like for months and
Mhm. Yeah.
but you might still there's still the enemy is still out there. He's
Yeah.
still
Right.
seeking you. He still is not happy that you're in this place
Yeah.
of recovery. How do you combat that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and, I think it's really like, I have a couple people who I've been able to share with,
Mm,
talking about my eating disorders, and that was hard for me. A lot of people don't know or haven't known,
yeah,
especially when you're going through it, it's harder because, for me, at least it felt like, "Oh, but if I do it tomorrow, I don't want everyone to know," and it almost
yeah,
felt like this accountability, but I think today, because I have, shared everything with my husband, my grandma for me has been
mm,
that safe place as well, and just immediately bringing it to the light. Of course, number 1 with God, but also having someone that I can expose it to makes me feel a lot stronger and
mm,
less likely that the enemy can win in that area. So,
mm,
like I said, it has gotten so much better. I haven't had necessarily urges, but when I was in the depths of it, I would have periods where, yeah, I was successful, if you will, for maybe a month or 2, and then it
mhm,
happened again. But the times I did immediately pray, whether it was when I had the urge or even right after and confessing it, um, I just felt the enemy lose his power. And
mm,
it didn't really make sense, and it's hard to really articulate, but there is a supernatural exchange that happens, where there is more freedom. So
mm.
I would just say share it with somebody, be vulnerable, and it helps to have someone in it with you.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. I love the way you articulated that. I think, as you said, it is supernatural, so there is a sense that it's hard to explain, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it is so true about the power being lost. The enemy thrives in our life when he has control over our thoughts or we think he has control over our thoughts and we are hiding things or
Mhm.
we're not exposing that. I mean, there are
Yeah.
verses in the Bible that talk about,
Yeah.
exposing the darkness and
Yep.
bringing it to light and what that actually does spiritually
Right.
in us and through the power of the Holy Spirit and Jesus. So, yes, talking about it was a huge first step, even if that doesn't lead to immediate recovery, but just like finding those safe people that even if it's one person,
Right.
it could even be someone that you don't even know personally. I know, you and I, we started as,
Yeah.
like on Instagram, talking.
Yeah.
And so, whoever that is for you, I think
Right.
find that
Absolutely.
person. So I think that's, yeah, great advice. And then on the topic of body image, because we have talked about that a lot too. And I mean, I
Yeah.
will admit, even after 9 years of recovery myself, I
Wow.
still have days where I struggle with body image. And I want to
Absolutely.
I want to normalize that because I think that some people who are in recovery or who have not yet recovered, they might think if I have a day where I'm struggling with my body image, then I'm failing and maybe I didn't really recover and maybe I'm backtracking in my progress
Mm.
and that's
Mhm.
that's honestly not true. You'll never fully be able to control the attacks that the enemy puts on you. It's how you
Right.
respond to them. And so I'd
Yeah.
be curious to like for you, how do you How do you navigate body image challenges?
Such a good question. And yeah, it's something I'm still navigating every day. I think what I've learned to do and just kind of, even if my mind doesn't necessarily believe it, is just speak out loud, like, I am wonderfully
Mm,
and fearfully made, Psalm 139:4. And
yeah.
something happens again when you're speaking that over yourself. And I will say, like, I, I really believe I'm more beautiful than I was. And that's because I'm looking at myself from a place of like health and nourishment
Mhm.
instead of like looking at how I compare to the world. And
Mm,
it's tough. There's again days that are harder than others. And I think it's okay to desire to feel beautiful as a woman, but it shouldn't be what shouldn't be the number one thing. And
mhm,
um, I think as I continue just to kind of reprioritize what matters in my mind, it does happen over time. And it's been a daily decision. And for me, I think practically what it looks like now is um, immediately thinking that if I look at myself in the mirror and I don't like what I see, I'm not going to let the enemy win and have his voice be louder than what God's voice is. And I've done a couple of things. There's been times where I just, immediately pray again to God that
mhm,
I see myself the way that he sees me. And then we've been opening up to my husband and saying, like, I don't look how I look today. And then he says, what do you mean you're, beautiful? You're such an amazing husband. But it just helps me because that is what's true. Everyone is so beautiful the way that God made you and the body that he made you. And we just have to let that voice be louder than what the enemy's saying in the world, what the
mhm.
world's saying.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's important. I want to backtrack to what you said about saying the truth to yourself, even when you don't believe
Yeah.
it. I'm a
Yeah.
huge proponent of that too. And
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing. It's can be daunting or hard to focus on truth when you are like, yeah, I know that's what the Bible says, but I don't necessarily believe that for myself, or it's really hard for me to
Right.
believe that for myself. But our
Right.
minds, the way God designed our minds, the more we hear truth, or the more we hear
Mhm.
anything, we'll believe whatever
Right.
we hear. So putting the truth first, even when it's
Yeah.
hard, even when it doesn't make sense, even when your mind doesn't want to believe it, the more you hear it, it will impact you over time. So I think,
Very true. Yeah.
yeah, I love that. And you mentioned your
Mhm.
husband a couple of times. So,
Mhm.
for those listening who might have a significant other or spouse, do you have any tips for them if they're maybe afraid to talk to their spouse or their significant other about what they're
Mm.
dealing with?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I want to first acknowledge how scary it can feel.
Mhm,
Um, I felt so alone and I felt like no one would understand. I felt so much shame and embarrassment, especially with specifically the bulimia. And that's exactly where the enemy wanted me. He wanted me to hear that lie. He wanted me to stay alone and to keep things hidden. And I did for a long time. Um, I felt like I had no problem coming to God with it, but to actually open up to anyone, let alone the person that I wanted to see me as beautiful and attractive, it's really tough. But I just prayed for the strength and I felt wrong because I hadn't shared it. Like I was keeping something from the person that I loved. And when I finally did expose it and share that with him, I immediately felt so much just freedom because I
mhm,
knew, number one, I wasn't hiding something from my partner. But two, I knew that there was no longer this control, the power the enemy had to keep me ashamed. And
mhm,
my husband, he just welcomed me with open arms. He just loved
mhm,
on me and he just said, thank you so much for sharing this with me. Like, um, I'm here with you through this. Like, let's pray together. I never felt any shame or condemnation from him at all. And again, I know I'm blessed to have a husband who received me that way. It might not be the same exact response for whoever is listening because it's shocking. People hear this, and if they don't know what it's like to go through these eating disorders, if they care about you, they're worried. So
mhm,
even if they don't respond with those words, like just know that by speaking it out, you are already going to feel so much peace and freedom because you're exposing it, and that's biblical. That's what God wants.
mhm,
Um, so I think, yeah, it really did. It helped me a lot. It helped me also kind of have, accountability can sound like a scary word, but knowing that my husband knew that I had these temptations, it did lose a lot of power. And it felt like I knew if I was to go binge and purge, I would want to share with him. I would feel the need to tell him because it felt like I was hiding something if I didn't. And it wasn't again this like forceful or pressured way, but it helped me to just have like another level of like accomplishment, if you will, if I was able to fight that battle. And it was never alone. I was, of course, with God, but also I would bring him into it and say how I felt, tempted here, or even if I fell short, say I did have a binge purge episode, I would tell him right away. And um, I just felt again so much less alone in it.
Mm. Well, I'm so thankful that you have him. And to your point, yes, it's you never know how someone is going to respond, but if only for yourself, sharing,
Right.
that's number one important.
Yeah.
And knowing, hopefully, in someone's situation who's listening, hopefully you do have at least a partner who is at the very least going to pray for you. And
Yeah.
and be a listening ear. 'Cause sometimes just even talking about it, even to someone who doesn't understand, can be
Yes.
that
Yeah.
burden off of you. So, but I am so thankful that you've had such a good experience sharing that, and also you mentioned sharing with your grandma as well. So
Yeah.
beyond sharing with a spouse or a significant other,
Hmm.
what was that experience like sharing it with other people in your family? Do you have any
Yeah.
tips on that too?
Yeah. I think, if you're someone who is listening because you have someone in your life who is struggling with an eating disorder,
Hmm.
I would recommend handling it the same way my grandma did. She didn't know. She hadn't specifically gone through it. But what she did was number one, she just listened, right? Like I was able just to vent to her and cry to her, and she just, she gave me the space and time to share. And she told me that she was proud of me for sharing and that I wasn't gonna go through this alone. She said, she didn't have all the answers, but she was there to pray with me. And just that gentle space that I had for someone to hear me and hug me and say it was going to be okay and you're not going through this alone. God is with us through it made such a difference. And you don't necessarily have to tell them that you know the answers, but just again that you're there for them. It makes such a difference.
Hmm. And like you're not expecting someone else to fix you either.
Yeah, right,
Just that they know and they're able to support you how you might need. So, well, I love that you have that
right.
relationship with your grandma as well. And I guess
Yeah.
I'll throw a spoiler in there. So the last episode this season, I'm going to talk about my own grandma.
Really? Oh my gosh, I
Yeah,
love
so I love
that.
that you brought that up. But
No
a little
way.
different experience because
Mm,
she's no longer alive. But anyway,
mm,
I love that you had that opportunity to share, and thank you for the tips because I think that is for sure a very scary thing to share. So
yeah,
if you're out there listening, we want to acknowledge that it's hard.
right. Yeah,
it doesn't need to feel easy. I think that's very normal. You're
right.
gonna be apprehensive about it um and just that that pressure. I don't know if you felt like this, Taylor, but I think for me, I felt so much fear that if I told someone, they were going to force me to do recovery in a way that I wasn't comfortable with,
Mm, yeah, right.
or try to dictate how quickly I recovered or all of those things. And I think that there's a lot of apprehension in that too, and just
Mm,
knowing that
mhm.
that may not be what their reaction is going to be. That's a lot of it
Yeah,
in our own heads that we're going to lose control over even how we recover. But everybody
right,
recovers
right.
differently. Your recovery is
Yeah,
not going to look the same as ours,
right.
and that's okay. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
well, thank you, Taylor, for all of the incredible tips from your personal experience that I'm sure are going to help people listening to navigate some of these challenges that we face in recovery and just with the people that we love. So, do you have
Yes.
any do you have any final thoughts that maybe we didn't touch on that you just really feel like you want to share before we close?
Mm. Yeah, I think number one, just, if you're hearing this and listening to this, you do not identify with any of your shortcomings. You do not identify with your eating disorders. Just know and believe that if you have given your life to Jesus, that you are completely clean and pure in his eyes. He sees you as his precious child, and you are victorious in that alone. So the enemy wants us to, again, identify with our shortcomings and think that we're labeled as having this eating disorder, and that's just not the case at all. You are healed today, even if sometimes you mess up, even if you just did today or you do tomorrow, like you are washed clean in his eyes, and just live from that place, that you are free. You are free.
Mm,
And just I have to remind myself that every day, because it's a constant daily walk of sanctification.
mm,
But I just want people to hear that. And again, from a practical standpoint, for me personally, it was just stop dieting. I know it sounds simple, but just allow yourself to eat freely, nourish yourself. The rest will come. I believe like the body image stuff is like a result of just allowing yourself to be healed from the food and calories that your body does need. If you're hungry, it's
mhm.
because you need to eat. So I
Yes.
know again that can sound very like simple, but that was what I just needed to start doing to really not have any more binge purge
Mm,
episodes. I was going to recommend the book that I actually saw on your website. I believe it's how I came across it.
mm,
It's called The Bulimia Help Method by Richard and Ali Kerr.
mhm.
And it
Yeah.
was really helpful. It was just a very practical book that gave very honest advice. And there's a lot of
Mhm,
actually testimonies of women who were going through recovery as well. And that just gave me so much hope. So definitely recommend that one. I don't think it's necessarily a faith-based book, but it's a really good, just practical resource.
mhm. Agreed. I'm so glad that you came across that through my website.
Right.
It helped me so much. I'm so thankful that it resonated with
Yeah.
you too. And I agree, it's not faith-based, but it has so much practical advice that was a
Yes.
game changer for my recovery. If anyone
Hmm.
struggles with bulimia who's listening. So,
Yes.
um,
Very
s-
good.
thank you for bringing that up. I will link that in the show notes as well. And Taylor, how can someone listening maybe connect with you? Maybe they're listening to your story right now. It's really resonating with them. They feel a lot
Mm.
of connection to what you're saying, and they might just
Yeah.
want to chat with somebody who understands. How can they do that?
I would love that. Please do reach out to me. I would love to be praying for you. You can do so even anonymously to either my email or Instagram. My email is Taylor N. Halverson at gmail.com. And my Instagram is Taylor.Halverson. So I'd love to connect with you.
I appreciate that you're willing to do that. I'll put that in the show notes as well for anyone who's driving, can't write it down right now, or might just need the reminder so they can see it there. So, any other resources you want to recommend? I know the book was a huge
Yeah.
recommendation, but if there's anything else that maybe helped you along the way, feel free to add that.
I mean, that book, yeah, that was amazing. Obviously, all of your episodes, like I think I've listened to all of them for
Mm,
sure. And then journaling too is a great method for
mm,
me of just like releasing my thoughts, like even
yeah.
like journaling to the Lord. Like it was almost like writing up my prayers. That really helped. So
Mm.
those are the biggest things, I think.
Yeah, I love that. The journaling. I go back and forth on journaling, and I always need the reminder because it does. Every time it really helps.
Yeah,
It's just another way of connecting with God in what you're going through,
right.
and to kind of having that record too. It's kind of neat to go back through and read some of the entries and see how you've grown, how you changed, what you were
Yes,
struggling with on a
totally.
certain day, because it is hard to
Right.
remember. And so, yeah, thank you so much for just sharing just everything. Your openness is really, I think,
Mm.
refreshing. It's a really great example to people who might be struggling with that right now, to just be to let down the facade and just be vulnerable, because that is really a huge step to healing. So I love seeing that you are doing that and sharing your story, and I really just I again I hope that this episode resonates with so many who are in the thick of it right now and just needed this encouragement.
Mm. Yes, thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate you having me on. It's like I said, a full circle moment. And yeah, again, for whoever's listening, just know that we already prayed for you. We're going to continue to pray for you and
Mhm.
hopefully you can connect.
Yes. Yes, we prayed right before we hit record on this
Yes.
episode, and it's very important. We all need that prayer support. So please reach out to
Mm.
either of us, both of us, if you are listening and you just really need a friend. We're here.
Yes.
Hey there, it's Jayme again, and you made it to the end of this episode of the Recover with God podcast. I pray that God is speaking to your heart right now and that you go on with your day feeling less alone. If If you haven't already, I hope you hit that follow button to subscribe and receive notifications for future episodes. And did you know that if you leave a quick rating or review, you can help more people find this podcast too? God designed us for community, so follow along and help others do the same to feel less alone together. I hope you tune in next time, and until then, you can always catch up on any past podcasts you might have missed. P.S. I'm cheering for you.